Lindsey Lusher or Lindsey Shute, is a graduate of BCEP's class of 2007. And she joined Kristen Wilson, who's in the audience today, in Oaxaca as a Luz scholar. Kristen was a first Luz scholar, a real trailblazer. And both of them were in Oaxaca in December of 2006. And if any of you were following Mexican politics at the time, that was a very difficult time. And I was Lindsey's thesis advisor here and would frequently Skype with her and have conversations about her research. But in the background, we would hear sounds of gunshots and I don't know what else. So that was a pretty exciting time. And despite all the difficulties, both Kristen and Lindsey did a wonderful job. And now, after she graduated, Lindsey's been working with transportation alternatives in New York City.
That's great. Thank you, Gautam. So Gautam asked me to present today on basically how my education at Bard in the first year interacted and informed my internship at INSO in Oaxaca. And so I'm going to go through that, but I wanted to also just, there's the fourth person, the fourth BCEP student right now. Steve is now in Oaxaca, who I just saw a couple of months ago when I was at Kristen's wedding in Oaxaca. And so I wanted to also just talk a little bit, not just about the work that I did in Oaxaca, but also about the studies and so on that other BCEP students have done with INSO. So first I wanted to introduce the cast of characters that we have and this really wonderful relationship that Bard has been privileged to develop with Juan Jose and INSO. You can see that it's actually up top there is Kristen, the first Bard BCEP intern, getting married by Juan Jose and Laura from INSO. So we've developed a really, really special relationship with INSO, as you can see, probably quite unusual in a university setting. But I think it deserves to be said that Juan Jose has been a really terrific mentor for Bard students that have gone to Oaxaca and has been incredibly patient and able to really impart in the students that have gone to Oaxaca and worked with him a sense of the importance of traditional knowledge and thinking beyond our first year statistics class and our economics class, as great as they were, Gautam, that water has really special and spiritual meaning for people around the world, and that needs to be highlighted and that needs to be considered when designing any project. So these are the three papers that have been written. One is forthcoming from Bard students in collaboration with INSO. So payment for ecosystem services is a really fantastic model to look at and to study as a student of environmental policy. And this is a very crude sort of description of what PES is, and I'm sure Gautam and Alex are probably cringing a little bit at this. But anyways, it's a relationship between these two groups, and there's a natural resource that they both have an interest in protecting. And so, as Juan Jose has described very clearly, and Alex as well, that to actually create a PES system, you need to incorporate science, economics, law and policy, and social science. And conveniently, that is BCEP's first-year curriculum. So that's a very nice thing. So I'm just going to go through those various the various core curriculum areas and talk about the studies that Bard students have done in those areas. So this first paper that I did, my thesis is up top. Those are my research questions. And then Alja, who worked in Oaxaca after I did, actually built on that research quite nicely. And coming from Bard, we don't really, and not being from Oaxaca, we have very little, and in a very short time frame, we have kind of a very limited ability to, help, I guess. We're certainly there to study, but in terms of helping to build a program, our capacity is limited because we don't have the cultural understanding, but we do have a good basis in economics and science and statistics. So what students have tried to do is basically help to form a baseline from which INSO can build from. So that's what we have tried to offer. So Alja and I both concentrated on looking at the current services, water services in the city of Oaxaca. We both did household interviews throughout the city. And basically, what I found in my survey, very basically, is that the government's account of water services was pretty different from the reality on the ground, and that although many people had a water connection, that the government was pretty right on about what, about 90% of people had a municipal connection. Very few people received water on a day-to-day basis, usually about twice a week, and even sometimes once every 2 weeks in the dry season. And with my survey I also did a contingent evaluation exercise where I basically found that residents were already paying quite a bit to compensate for not having good water services, and so they were buying bottled water, garrafon, so on. And so they were actually willing to pay about 10 times more than they were currently paying for water services, which is important information to know, because if water was priced a little bit higher and they built a system, as Juan Jose was saying, by repairing the pipes and so on, you could actually save families money over the long term on a yearly basis, which could do a lot for poverty alleviation in the area. Alja, and I'm just going to summarize here, actually looked specifically at averting behavior among Oaxacan residents, and that is, how much people are spending on bottled water and so on. And she found, as you can see, between $704 to over $1,000 a year. And basically, over the long term, she found that it would also save the city money to invest in a municipal water system that, I don't know where this estimate is from, but it would cost about $1 billion a year to install the system. Or $1 billion, not a year, but overall. And then science, although we have had, none of the BARD students who have gone there thus far have actually written a paper on, biophysical characteristics of the Oaxaca watershed. We have all based our work on actually PhD students who have lived in the area for a long time, and just the basic knowledge that we gained in our first year at BARD as the foundation for our papers, and the justification for approaching a PES system in the first place. And then Kristen, this is her paper, sitting in the audience, maybe she should come up here. Kristen also did interviews, but actually she worked in the watershed communities. And Kristen was able to do this because she was actually in Oaxaca for about 1.5 years. Is that right? Yeah. And will probably be there more in the future since she's now married to a Oaxacan. So, in any case, so Kristen interviewed people about their current practices with alternative technologies and the type of PES system that they would like to have set up if that were an option. She found that people had a pretty low level of knowledge of watershed dynamics. There were actually existing PES systems in some communities that people didn't know about. So that was interesting to find out as well, that there was a very big lack of transparency. And in terms of alternative technologies, one of the interesting things she found out was that switching to a composting toilet, that was a big challenge. Families who had already switched to a flush toilet had very little interest in switching to a composting toilet, so that was something that needs to be addressed.